Backstory. My family used to be really close, but that changed in 2003 when my dad, 55 male, discovered that my mom, 54 female, was having an affair with John, 54 male, my dad's childhood best friend. He was basically his brother back then, and he was my dad's best man in his wedding with my mom. He begged her to stay and work things out, but my mom ended up leaving him for John, and eventually they got a divorce, and my mom ended up marrying John 5 months later. My twin sister Sarah, 27 female, was always the stereotypical daddy's girl. Dad spoiled her a bit more than the rest of us, and she was basically his shadow back then, and that's why it was really surprising to us that Sarah chose to stay with our mom after the divorce. Back then, me, 27 male, and her were the only ones to still live with our parents. We have 4 other brothers. I chose to stay with Dad, and Sarah chose to live with Mom, and in the weekends, she would come to stay with me and Dad. I chose to stay with Dad, and I occasionally went to Mom's house. To say that the divorce and my sister choosing to stay with Mom ducked up my dad is an understatement. He tried to act like he was okay in front of us, but every single weekday for the year following the divorce, I could hear him cry himself to sleep. After the divorce, the relationship between Sarah and Dad didn't change that much. He started to spoil her a bit more than usual and still remained the usual super dad, showing up in every parent-teacher conference, ballet recital, and soccer match, and being the most present dad possible. Things started to change when she, suddenly, changed her mind about med school. Our dad is a surgeon, and she always said that she wanted to follow his steps, but Mom and John ended up pressuring her to change her career path to become a lawyer. Mom and John are both lawyers. During her studies, John started mentoring her, and they became really close. After she finished her education, he got her a job at his law firm. On to the issue. In 2017, Sarah got married. My dad was absolutely thrilled about the wedding. He gave Sarah a blank check for her dream wedding. To be fair, he did this to all of us. He really liked weddings. But in Sarah's case, he was really excited because she is his only daughter, and I always remembered him talking about walking her down the aisle. Like every wedding that we went to, he always said to her that he couldn't wait for the day to walk down his little girl down the aisle. One day before the wedding, Sarah drops the bomb that Dad and John will be walking her down the aisle together. Well, Dad is the most non-confrontational person to walk on this earth, and she expected him to just suck it up. But he didn't do that. They got into a huge fight. First time I've seen him get angry. And in the end, he didn't attend the wedding, and John ended up walking Sarah down the aisle. The fallout was massive. After the wedding, Dad and his side of the family basically disowned her, and their relationship became non-existent. She tried to reach out after a while and make amends several times, but he simply didn't want to talk or hear about her. We expected him to turn around when she gave birth in 2018, but he doesn't even want to meet her kids. Earlier this year, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, the treatment didn't work, and he is terminal. Even with that, he still doesn't want to see her again, and she doesn't understand that. I am very close to my dad, and this last few weeks are being very difficult to me. How do I convince her to let him go? I think there really isn't anything OP can do. I would say that by her choosing the man who took his wife and life away to walk her down the aisle, that she was the one who chose to disown her father. She made her choices years ago. Now she has to live and die with the consequences. I would suggest to OP to spend his energy and time on his dad and not to bother about the dead relationship. Update. A week after I posted the original post, my dad started getting worse. His health started declining really fast. We lost him exactly 1 month ago. It wasn't pretty. I never thought it would be, but I never thought it would be that heartbreaking. He was in a lot of pain. He'd been through so much in these last months. As heartbreaking as it was to us, he deserved to rest. He was tired. In the end, he was lucid enough to say his goodbyes to me and my older brothers. Hearing him saying what he said to me was one of the most painful and beautiful moments of my life. His words to me meant a lot. I won't say exactly what he said because I believe that it's just too personal. He said goodbye to my daughters, 11 months and 2 years old. It was just like when I was a kid. He gave them a kiss on the forehead, told them to be good girls, and said that he loved them. It was something I won't ever forget. And it hurts like hell that they are so young to understand what happened. They still ask about Grandpa, and every time I try to explain to them that he isn't coming back. They don't seem to understand that, and how can I blame them? I'm 27 years old. I honestly don't get it. I was supposed to get a lot more years with my dad. It doesn't seem fair at all. The worst part was my twin sister Sarah. Dad died without speaking to her. I tried to talk to him about her, but he wasn't interested in speaking with her. She started getting more desperate, and suddenly, he died. It was expected, but she was in denial. His funeral was beautiful. A lot of people shared their stories about him. It was nice. Sarah saw Dad for the first time since the night before her wedding. She didn't recognize him. He was very skinny. Dad was always a bit overweight, the famous dad bod, but he had lost a lot of weight from cancer. She cried a lot during the whole funeral. Mom and John tried to show up at the ceremony, and my uncles were forced to kick them out of the funeral. Good ducking riddance. Dad's will went as expected as it could. Dad's family came from old money, petrochemicals. So he always had a lot of money. He left a little bit of money and properties divided equal to all his kids, including Sarah. He left a trust fund, which was a lot of money, for all his grandkids, including Sarah's kids, which he never met. It was honestly expected. My dad never really cared about money that much. He just wanted us to be comfortable and assure that his grandkids all had something to support them. The tricky part was the personal things. He left a really big letter to all of us, except Sarah. It was really personal stuff. In my letter, he spoke to me about our story, about my childhood. It was really nice. I must have read the letter like 100 times, and I cried every single time. One of my dad's favorite hobbies was photography. He was quite an enthusiast, and the subject of his photos was pretty much our family. When he and Mom were together, later it turned out to be just me and my siblings. As a result of this, we had a lot of pictures from us growing up. He gave each of us a photo album, and behind each photo, he wrote something, where it is taken, and a few words. I was honestly very surprised with this. He must have done it long before he died. It was a very thoughtful goodbye gift, something that was very typical of Dad. Sarah didn't get a letter, and her album didn't have anything wrote behind her photos. And when she found out about this, she had a mental breakdown. The regret was eating her alive. Still is. She was admitted to a hospital and spent an entire week there. She is doing a bit better now, getting a little bit better every day. Her husband and I are really confident in her recovery. She is sleeping and eating almost normally now. She still starts to cry randomly, multiple times on a daily basis, but it's getting better. At least that's what I am telling to myself. Which brings us to last week. My wife and I discovered that we are expecting again. It wasn't planned or anything like that. My wife switched birth controls last month, and she spends a week without taking the pill. It's still very early in her pregnancy, so we haven't told anyone yet. The thing is that I'm really angry. I'm angry that my future kid is not going to be able to meet Dad. I'm ducking pissed, honestly. It doesn't seem fair at all. I'm angry and I'm scared. My dad was supposed to guide me in the whole parenthood process. He was teaching me a lot of us, with my daughters. I'm ducking scared of doing this without him. I'm scared of not being a good father, like he was to me, because my kids deserve that. This is it, folks. This whole situation could be a lot better. I played the what-if scenario on my head every day. Unfortunately, it doesn't change anything. This is honestly a bitter ending. Doesn't seem fair at all. But that's the thing about life. It's actually never fair. That's a sad story, guys. Looks like OP's dad was a great guy. In my opinion, what his daughter did to him was horrible and heartbreaking. I'm not surprised that even on his deathbed, he didn't want to see her. Bless him. My ex-wife and I had our daughter very young, got married very young, and then divorced very young. If you couldn't do the math, we had our daughter when I was 18 and she was 17. We got married quickly after she gave birth, then divorced at 22 and 21 when our daughter was 4. After we got divorced, my parents died, and I was the sole beneficiary of their wealth. This allowed me to get my doctorate without any financial problems, and I now make a very generous salary, not to be a brag. My ex-wife and her husband are not very well off financially. My ex-wife doesn't have a degree, and her husband works a low-level software job. They're not struggling for food or shelter or anything like that, but they also don't really have much extra for luxuries. They have 2 kids together, and her husband has one from a previous marriage. I have 50% custody of our daughter. We alternate every 2 weeks. I try to be generous with her for Christmas and her birthday, but not spoil her. I usually keep big gifts behind a challenging but achievable goal for her. And if she doesn't achieve it, I usually allow for some other way to get it and give her something smaller. I also make sure she knows not to brag about what she has, and that not everyone is as fortunate as her. Her birthday came around recently, and she's been begging me for expensive wireless earbuds. She did very well on her report card and has been practicing the violin diligently without putting up any fuss, so I got them for her. They were something like $250. When she went to her mother's and wore them, apparently her step-siblings got incredibly jealous because they wanted them as well, especially the oldest from her stepdad's previous marriage. Apparently, this has been an issue before that neither my daughter nor my ex-wife told me about. I let her take her PlayStation to her mom's house so she has something to do because they don't have one. They all share one computer for games, which I can see being infuriating for them. I was surprised my daughter didn't tell me about it before, but she said that she didn't want to bother me about it. My ex-wife called this time and said that she either wanted me to stop sending her over with these gifts or to also get them for her kids. I'm obviously not going to buy kids I have no relation to and don't parent presents. And I don't want to stop sending my daughter over without her headphones or game console, since she works hard at school and her extracurriculars, so deserves to have fun after that and not have to share one computer. This has been causing some problems in the past few days because my ex-wife keeps saying that I have to do something. But I asked if my daughter was bragging, and she said she wasn't. She's just doing her own thing, and her step-siblings were annoyed about it. I'm not sure what to do since my ex has been causing a ruckus about it, but I don't see myself as doing anything wrong here. My daughter isn't bragging and is just listening to music and relaxing. There's no reason to take away stuff from her. I don't think OP has to do anything differently. In my opinion, it's mom's job to make her step-siblings and half-siblings understand that it's not fair of the daughter to not have things her father gives her. OP's ex-wife's other children and stepchildren are not OP's responsibility, and OP is allowed to parent his own child as he sees fit. I also don't see any easy way out of here. And I guess the other kids are eventually going to feel jealous of her anyways, when she gets her first car, or she has her whole college paid for, or she goes on an expensive vacation with her dad. It's good that OP's daughter is not really bothered about that. My sister-in-law is an aspiring author and has been working on a full book series for a few years now. She plans to self-publish and has been having a hard time deciding on what her book covers will look like, since she doesn't want blank covers. I'm an artist by hobby and would like to make it my main means of income eventually. I'm not a known artist by any means, honestly, and my sister-in-law knows that I'm working on getting my art out there. So she approached me about making the art for her book covers and started playing up how it's going to get my art attention. Initially, I was interested, but when I mentioned payment for my work, she wouldn't talk about it and started saying that we can work something out later. She won't even name what she would be willing to pay, and I told her unless she's willing to pay me, she's not getting my art. She also started watching me as I draw, and makes a noticeably disgusted face when I put my artist signature on the piece. She eventually brought up the topic of me supplying her art cover again, and specifically asked that I not put my signature on the pieces. I reminded her that I hadn't even agreed to do her covers, and asked why she didn't want my watermark on the pieces. She said it was ugly, and took the focus off her book title and her own name. So I asked if I did the works, would I be paid and credited for the cover work? She got upset and said I'm being greedy and should just help her because we're family, and that she gets free art from her friends all the time. I told her to get free art from her friends then. I will not be working for free. Sister-in-law stormed off to her room after that, and her friends on Facebook have been calling me an ass for not being willing to help a beginner author make a good-looking book. It's starting to make me second-guess my decision to not supply the art for her books. Am I the idiot, or is she just being unreasonable? Edit. Update. I'm standing firm on not giving her art for her books, and am currently looking into purchasing a lockbox to stash my sketchbooks, or housing my work with a friend. I'm not even going to entertain her if she suddenly offers to pay now, since her attitude has shown she's just trying to profit off free work, or blame my work if her books don't sell. Edit to clarify. I haven't even started any art for her, as she refuses to pay for the work. Any art I've already made is either personal or a commission for a friend who is actually paying me. I'm not against keeping the signature off a piece, provided I am properly credited and paid for the work done. I don't think OP is an idiot. Not only is she refusing to pay for OP's time and effort, she doesn't want OP to take credit for OP's work via her signature. That's not being family, as she so claims. That's being a selfish brat. I suggest OP stop any discussion with her on this topic. Even if she offered to pay, at this point, would you even want your art involved? I think OP should avoid any future arguments by making this a non-topic. I'm not interested, thanks. Or a flat-out no.